Hello everyone, this is Damon with PixNub. In this video, I'm going to show you a really cool way to batch process your image compositions using a Photoshop Droplet combined with a new face recognition cropping system. And this is going to automate the entire process of making the composition. And I'll just show you here, I've got a folder of 3 TIFF images. These are TIFF with transparency. I've got a template in this folder I want to use and an empty folder to save those in. I'm just going to drag and drop this whole folder into the Droplet, and that is going to open Photoshop and then run an action. And that action is automatically finding the face, and then it's positioning and scaling the image and putting it into the background. And this is very quick, and you can see how quick it does this and saves the images. Now I did mention I was using TIFF images, and it saved these as TIFF because the way I have the Droplet set up, it saves with the same file format. If you are using PNG images, it can take a lot longer to save. So I recommend either using TIFF with transparency or set up your Droplet to save as something else, most likely a JPEG. And I'll show you how to do that as well. So let's just look at these images here. And then you can see all of these have the player positioned perfectly based on how I had that face recognition plugin set up. So I'm just going to delete these here. And then we're going to start over, and I'm going to actually delete this Droplet as well. And I'm going to show you how exactly to set this up. And this may look complicated, but it's actually very simple. So the first thing I do when I set this up is I want to build one of these compositions manually, and that way I know exactly how to set up the face recognition positioning. So I'll just open up the background and then the foreground. I'm going to copy and paste, and every composition you do is going to be different. So when you set up the face recognition, you need to know exactly where you want the face to be in that particular composition. So I'm just going to position and then scale. That's somewhere right about there, I think. So now what I need to know is how far the eyes or the middle of the face is up from the bottom. And the eyes are typically halfway between the chin and the head. So how the face recognition software works is it positions based off the middle of the face, which is pretty much right between the eyes. So you can grab a ruler tool and measure, or instead what I like to do is grab the crop or the selection tool and go right over the eyes to the bottom of the image, and then I'll crop that. Before I do that, I'm going to look at the size of this. We've got 8 by 10 at 500 pixels per inch, which is 4,000 by 5,000 pixels. And then when I crop down to where the eyes are, I have 3867 tall. So what I'm going to do is use a calculator here and do some math. And that gives 77.3%. I think last time I did it I had 78%, so you may get a difference each time you do that by a percent or so, depending on how you're looking at it, but it shouldn't really matter too much. I'll just close that. Now what we need to do is build this action. So the first thing we want to do is come into our actions. I'm going to throw this away so I can show you from scratch building one. And I'm going to create a new action set and just call this Sports Posters. And a set is just a folder that contains different actions. Then I'll create a new action. I'll call this home plate, and then hit record. And you see this red button is now lit up. This is the record button, and this is the stop button. So I'll hit the record button again, and so now it's going to record anything that we do into this action. So I'll go run that crop, or the portrait crop face recognition plugin, and you see that it does more of a headshot by default. And so what I'm going to do first is go to this preset called face recognition check and show you that the height of the face, or the whole head, is roughly, or it's pretty much exactly 200 in your zoom here. And so what this face recognition plugin does is it normalizes the zoom factor per image, so it doesn't matter if one image is bigger than the other image. It's going to base everything off of the size of the person's head. And so what we need to do is put the eyes at, I'm going to go with 77%. That's what we measured when we did this, or when we did those measurements. And that puts the eyes 77% of the way from the bottom to the top of the composition. And so what I'll do next is just zoom out until we get this about where it needs to go. I think I was at 42 last time. That looks pretty good, I think. And so you see this crop is now square, and that's because we did the face recognition preset, which is square at 1 by 1. So we need to resize this to the size of our background. So I'll go 8 by 10, and then I'm going to hit this resample, and this is very important if you're trying to match the exact size of your background. You need this to be 4,000 by 5,000 pixels, just like the background. So now you see 4,000 by 5,000, and after you've set up your width and height, you'll need to recrop to see that applied. And it's not actually scaled the image yet or resampled. It does that once it's applied. But this shows you what it's going to do. It's going to resample 8 by 10, 500 pixels per inch. And this scaling factor, this will vary depending on the size of your image. Each image will be different. In this case, we're upscaling by 6%. Not really a big deal there. It's a very small percentage. But you've also got your resample interpolations here. And most of the time, you can just leave those at automatic. That should be fine. So I will just hit apply. What it's done now is saved all of those settings into this action, or into this action step. So the next thing to do is to bring in the background. So I'm going to go to File and choose Place Embedded, and then just grab the background that we want. And you can see it fits perfectly. The aspect ratio is exactly what we did with the Portrait Crop plugin. It's 8 by 10 at 500 pixels per inch, so we can just check to OK that. You can see that is now above your foreground, so we'll just drag that below, and you can see it's recording all of this into the action here. Last, I'll just flatten that and then stop the recording. So you see it's just a basic 4-step action. So what I can do now, and I recommend doing this, is testing your action before you batch process this. So I'm going up to the beginning to where we open the image, click on that new action, and click the play button. If everything worked right, it should build our poster. And it did, so it looks like it works. So I'm just going to close this. And now I'll show you how to set up that droplet. And so under the File and the Automate, you have an option called Create Droplet. It's already remembered what I did last time, but I'll just go through this step by step. So you need to choose a name for this, and I'm going to call this Home Plate and save this on the desktop. And then sometimes I see if you come back into to reset up your droplet, it defaults this back to the default. So if you're ever coming in to modify this, always check to make sure it is actually on your action. Even if you're modifying something else, whenever you come in here to resave, make sure that you check to make sure your action is correct. So this is the action it's going to run. We need to choose a save location, and we'll use that same finished posters folder. And then here you've got two options to save. If you click this override action save as commands, this will save based on a step in your action, which we don't have. And I'm going to show this next. But for right now, we're not going to do that. We're just going to have the Droplet batch processor automatically save. And it's going to save in the same format. So it's going to save as a TIFF. And this example file name, where it says my file, that will actually be replaced by the name of the image that it's running. And then based on that, you can add some more text. So in this case, I'm putting _home_plate behind that. And then it shows .gif, but it's going to actually be a TIFF in this case. It's going to be whatever the extension is. So you'll have to add in the extension row here. I'm just going to hit OK. So everything should be set up. And so now, see our finished posters is empty again. I'm just going to drag and drop those player images into that droplet. And if everything is set up right, it should build those posters for us. And it looks like it's running the action correctly. So we'll just give it a second here to finish and check to see if we have posters in the output folder. And sure enough, we've got our poster images here. And you see that it used the image name _home_plate.tiff, just like we had set up. And now I'm going to show you if you wanted to save this as a JPEG, because when you're opening your transparent images, those will either be TIFF, PSD, or PNG. And usually you'll want to save them off as a JPEG. So I'll just delete these here. And I'll come back into, well, first I need to change the action to save as a JPEG. So I'm going to open one of these player images here. Then I'm going to come back into the action. I'm going to play this action just to get it to the last step in the action where it's already built the poster. And if you want to modify an action, click on the step where you want to start recording and then press record. Then it's going to start recording steps after this. So I'm just going to run a file, save as. Then I'm going to give this a different name here. Well, first I'm going to switch this to JPEG. I'm just going to call this x.jpg just to show you how the action save override works. And then I'll save it with a quality of 12. Then stop the action so the recording is done. So it's saving with JPEG, a quality level of 12. And it's got this name in here, x.jpg. I just wanted to show you this because it's going to actually not use that name with the droplet. It's going to use a naming convention that we set. So now I'm going to go back into the droplet. And I'm going to use this override action save as commands. And it says when this is on, files will be saved to the destination folder only by save as steps in the action. If there are no save or save as steps, no files will be saved. What this is saying is it's using those steps that we just recorded in the action where it's going to save. However, it's still going to use the naming convention that we have here. I guess minus the extension because it's using the JPEG extension and not the TIFF extension. And if you want to save as a different format, such as JPEG, you have to record that in your action. So one thing I'll point out too is sometimes when you come in to modify this, This, you'll see it defaults and your actions reset. I don't know why that is, but at least on my computer that sometimes happens. So if you're coming in here to modify something, make sure that you check to make sure it's going to play the correct action. Our save folder is still set up. Everything's good to go, so let's just hit OK. And when you hit OK, it doesn't look like it does anything, but it actually resaves that droplet. And I know it resaved because it put it back up in the upper left corner. So I'm going to come in here, and that x.jpg that we saved in the action, I'm going to delete that. And then I'm just going to drag and drop these again. This time, if it's all done right, it should build the same posters, but then save them as JPEG. And it did. And so you can see that it used the image name with the underscore home underscore plate like we had set up in the droplet, but it saved it as JPEG, and it did not use that name of x.jpg that we had in the action. So anyway, thanks for watching, and if you are interested at all in the portrait crop face recognition cropping system plugin, please be sure to visit our website. That is pixnub.com.